For 6 centuries, one empire engaged in a relentless series of conflicts against kings, sultans, republics, crusaders, rebels, and rising European powers. They conquered lands and lost territories, redefined borders and endured crises while maintaining an army that marched from the Balkans to the Arabian desert. Throughout this tumultuous journey, they achieved something almost no other empire in history managed. They never faced bankruptcy despite their constant warfare. The Ottoman Empire did not merely conduct wars. It discovered a remarkable strategy for financing them indefinitely. The Ottoman Empire thrived from approximately 1300 to 1922, surpassing even the longevity of both the Roman and British empires as well as nearly any state commonly discussed today. However, its durability is not the most intriguing aspect. The real enigma lies in how an empire that was almost perpetually at war did not collapse under financial strain. Many observers in the West often assume that empires crumble due to military defeats. Yet it is not wars that ruin states. Rather, it is the budgets and leadership failures that lead to downfall. The Ottomans grasped this early on and opted against establishing a conventional taxation and military system like those of their European counterparts. Instead, they devised a far more effective mechanism, an apparatus capable of self-financing through conflict. The Ottomans ingeniously circumvented this issue by abolishing cash payments to soldiers altogether. Instead of receiving traditional monetary compensation, they were granted rights over tax revenues. The Timar essentially represented a designated tax district assigned to a warrior, typically a cavalryman known as a sipahi, who received authority to collect taxes from specified villages or regions. In exchange for this privilege, he was responsible for equipping himself with arms and maintaining his horse while also mobilizing for military campaigns in appropriate gear and armor. There were no direct salaries involved. Each soldier became responsible for his own sustenance. This arrangement stands as one of history's most brilliant examples of financial engineering. By adopting this model, the state significantly reduced its expenditures while simultaneously encouraging soldiers to invest in local stability. After all, stable villages translated into reliable tax revenue. Consequently, peasants could live their lives under predictable local governance without constant upheaval. In turn, this allowed the empire to maintain an army capable of rapid mobilization without depleting its treasury or burdening it with excessive costs associated with professional soldiers. The Timar system not only optimized military readiness but also fostered an environment where loyalty and stability became intertwined within the fabric of society. A remarkable feat achieved through clever economic strategies rather than sheer force alone. Imagine if, in contemporary times, a government compensated its soldiers not with currency, but by granting them the authority to collect taxes from their region. This may sound perilous, and you would be correct, yet during the 13th and 14th centuries this system proved incredibly effective. It transformed the Ottoman military into a formidable force that operated primarily on tax revenues. This approach also had another significant advantage. It made warfare financially viable for the Ottomans. In contrast to their European counterparts, who relied on expensive knights or mercenaries requiring upfront payments, the Ottomans faced far fewer fiscal constraints. When a king in Europe ran low on funds, his army's loyalty often wavered, leading to potential disarray. The Ottomans did not encounter such dilemmas. Their soldiers remained continuously funded even during peacetime. In fact, war did not deplete their resources. Rather, it activated an intricate funding mechanism designed to support their forces. However, the Timar system was just one of several innovative financial structures that enabled the Ottomans to sustain 6 centuries of conflict without succumbing to economic strain. They employed another significant concept well known in Western discussions but often misunderstood: the Janissaries. This elite infantry corps played a crucial role in the empire's financial framework. To grasp this aspect of Ottoman finance more fully, we must delve into the history of the Janissaries, a group feared by foreign adversaries and despised by Christians while earning a level of trust from sultans that surpassed even that bestowed upon their own families. These were professional soldiers who trained rigorously from a young age, exhibiting unwavering loyalty solely to the state. In many ways, they can be likened to the medieval Marines of Europe. However, what set them apart financially was how the empire sourced and funded these troops. The Janissaries emerged from a system known as devshirme, often referred to as the gathering of boys. In Christian villages across the Balkans, young males were selected, forcibly removed from their homes, converted to Islam, and educated in military academies established by the empire. These boys underwent rigorous training and indoctrination, ultimately forming a class of soldiers wholly indebted to the state rather than local tribes or feudal lords. The ethical implications of this system are not lost on historians. It was undeniably brutal and coercive and should not be romanticized in any way. However, from a financial perspective, it accomplished what no other empire managed. It provided elite soldiers without imposing exorbitant initial costs associated with raising, educating, equipping, and training individuals from infancy. While considerable investments were made into the education and training of janissaries throughout their service, the initial burden of nurturing these children until adulthood effectively shifted onto subjugated communities. This practice allowed the Ottoman Empire to maintain a steady supply of loyal troops while minimizing its own financial liabilities during their formative years. Before delving deeper into these mechanisms, it is essential to understand who the Ottomans truly were. For many viewers in the West, this empire exists only in vague images. Turbans, sultans, domes, and janissaries come to mind. While such cinematic depictions are familiar, the intricate machinery powering these visuals remains largely obscure. Let us pause here to clarify and illuminate this historical foundation. Thus began a cycle where conquered populations unwittingly contributed to an imperial military apparatus that would endure through centuries of expansion and conflict. By leveraging such strategies for recruitment and funding, the Ottomans fortified themselves against external threats while ensuring an impressive level of military readiness at all times. The Ottoman Empire had a remarkable system that allowed it to acquire fully trained soldiers without incurring lifetime expenses that could deplete its treasury. Once these soldiers enrolled in the military, they received a salary and housing. However, they were forbidden from marrying or owning businesses during the initial years of their service. This restriction prevented potential conflicts of interest and helped the state maintain control over its forces. While the Timar system transformed cavalry into a self-sustaining entity, the janissaries turned infantry into an efficient and cost-effective professional corps. Together, these forces created a military framework that saved the empire tremendous amounts of money over centuries. Yet, the Ottomans did not stop there. They innovated something even more powerful, ensuring that warfare financed future wars. Each time the empire conquered new territories, it gained not just land but also new taxpayers, additional Timars, fresh trade routes, ports, and diverse sources of income. Every conquest reinforced the financial foundation for subsequent campaigns. In contrast to European kingdoms that might win battles only to return home impoverished, the Ottomans often came back richer than before. This was the essence of their long-term survival strategy, not merely luck or tactics but a keen understanding of financial flows. Geography played a crucial role in this economic success as well. The Ottoman Empire encompassed vital regions such as the Bosporus Strait, the Dardanelles, and parts of the eastern Mediterranean and Red Sea. If merchants sought to transport goods between Europe and Asia or vice versa, they paid tolls to traverse Ottoman lands. Silk from China, spices from India, carpets from Persia. All were subject to payments made to the Ottoman state. Venetian merchants, Arab traders, Balkan caravans, and North African fleets all navigated through this imperial gateway. This customs system proved so effective that by the 16th century, the empire emerged as one of the wealthiest states on earth. While warfare could be a costly endeavor, trade was far more lucrative. The empire constructed financial systems designed to capitalize on this profitability directly. Among these systems were state monopolies on essential goods such as salt, tobacco, coffee, and occasionally soap. These commodities were everyday necessities for life in the empire, ensuring that revenue flowed consistently into the treasury. Herein lies a story that resonates with contemporary themes. These monopolies can be seen as precursors to modern strategic national industries. Consider oil in Saudi Arabia or natural gas pipelines in Russia. Think about the Suez Canal in Egypt. Each empire has its source of income, an essential lifeline that facilitates growth and sustains power. The Ottoman approach exemplified how military prowess could intertwine seamlessly with fiscal strategies to create a formidable empire capable of enduring challenges over time. By maintaining stringent control over both military recruitment and economic resources, they crafted an interconnected system where conflict led to wealth rather than depletion. a model that continues to echo through history in various forms today. For the Ottomans, these monopolies represented a near-ideal source of perpetual revenue. Another financial strategy they employed involved the collection of tribute and management of vassal states. Numerous regions, stretching from Crimea to Wallachia, paid annual sums into the Ottoman treasury in exchange for protection or a degree of autonomy. It proved to be more cost-effective to accept tribute than to govern these territories directly, with the income generated being used to fund soldiers, construct roads, build fortifications, and maintain a navy. However, the true splendor, and ultimately the vulnerability, of the Ottoman financial system lay in its long-standing avoidance of loans. For centuries, the empire managed its affairs within its means. Military endeavors were financed through land grants, trade tariffs, tributes, plunder, and monopolistic practices. There was no spiraling public debt or colossal bond markets draining the treasury dry, nor were there foreign creditors wielding control over the fate of the empire. The Ottomans originated as a modest frontier principality located in the northwestern region of Anatolia under the command of Osman I, a military leader with a few thousand cavalrymen and an uncanny ability to be at the right place at opportune moments. As the Byzantine Empire began its decline and Mongol authority waned across the Middle East, Osman's followers found themselves positioned perfectly for territorial expansion. Their early victories were not merely military triumphs. They represented significant financial gains because each conquest brought land, resources, crops, taxes, and new populations from which revenue could be extracted. This situation could not last indefinitely. By the late 17th and into the 18th century, global circumstances shifted dramatically. European powers underwent industrialization at an unprecedented pace. Their armies adopted cutting-edge technologies that revolutionized warfare. Trade networks expanded beyond land routes previously dominated by the Ottomans and ventured across oceans. Suddenly, the empire found itself unable to depend on caravans and tariffs as reliable sources for military funding. Compounding this issue was the disintegration of the Timar system. Local taxpayers began to exploit their authority. Centralized oversight weakened considerably while soldiers became increasingly unreliable. The Janissaries emerged as a formidable political force during this time. Over the centuries, they amassed significant wealth and privileges, ultimately transforming into a state within a state. Their financial autonomy and political clout rendered them nearly unmanageable. Resistance to reforms became common among them, leading to resource depletion within the imperial treasury while simultaneously acting as one of the foremost obstacles against modernization efforts. When the empire eventually sought to adopt European-style military institutions, it found itself facing an uncomfortable reality. It had to implement monetary salaries for its troops, a move it had evaded for centuries. To fund this new approach, officials turned toward something far more perilous: foreign loans. During the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire commenced borrowing from European banks at exorbitant interest rates. The very European powers that had once been outmaneuvered now held sway over its financial destiny. As a result, debt levels soared uncontrollably while payments became irregular. By 1881, this precarious situation compelled the empire to relinquish control over its finances to an international commission led by France and Britain. A deeply humiliating conclusion to centuries of fiscal independence. Familiar scene, isn't it? A powerful state rises through stringent financial discipline and manages to stay afloat thanks to innovative systems. However, it often overlooks early warning signs and ultimately collapses when its economic structure fails. This brings us to the present day. If you think the Ottoman model seems outdated, just take a look around you. The same mechanisms are still in play today, merely dressed in contemporary attire. The ancient Timar system has evolved into modern government contracts and privatized military logistics. Nowadays, states outsource a substantial portion of their military operations to private enterprises, thereby reducing the direct burden on payrolls, much like the Ottomans did centuries ago. Trade tariffs have become central to contemporary struggles for control over maritime routes and energy corridors. From the Strait of Hormuz to the South China Sea, whoever commands these choke points wields significant influence over the revenues that flow through them. State monopolies persist in our era through national oil companies and sovereign wealth funds. For instance, Saudi Aramco mirrors the role of the Ottoman salt monopoly, but on a scale of trillions rather than mere millions. The concept of conquest funded by resources remains relevant today as nations engage in resource wars. Countries seek territories or exert influence not for glory, but for essential energy supplies, minerals, pipelines, and strategic geography. The echoes of the Ottoman Empire's decline resonate in today's national debt crises. Numerous countries finance their deficits through borrowing until their economic systems begin to crack under pressure. Examples include Argentina, Greece, and even current discussions surrounding U.S. debt. The fundamental financial logic of empires has not changed. Only its manifestations have evolved. So what is the takeaway from this analysis? Empires do not perish on battlefields. They succumb due to imbalances within their economies. The Ottomans survived for 6 centuries due to their disciplined, effective, and meticulously crafted financial systems that transformed warfare into an income-generating enterprise. They fell apart when this very system collapsed, when expansion no longer yielded returns, when trade routes bypassed their territories, when soldiers became prohibitively expensive, and when the empire had accrued so much debt that its future lay in the hands of foreign creditors. This leads us to a pivotal understanding of Ottoman financial systems. From their inception, warfare was perceived not as a burden but as a source of income. Every battle won translated into economic potential by acquiring valuable assets that would sustain their growth for generations to come. Thus began their extraordinary journey, one where conflict served as fuel for prosperity rather than an obstacle to stability. This historical narrative carries a more profound warning hidden within its folds. Financial systems can sustain power for centuries, until they can no longer do so. History does not repeat itself verbatim. However, if we fail to grasp its lessons, it will crush us nonetheless. In essence, as we reflect on past empires like that of the Ottomans, we can see striking parallels in modern governance and economic strategies. Just as those historical powers rose and fell based on their fiscal policies and resource management practices, today's nations must navigate similar challenges with increased scrutiny on their economic frameworks. Understanding these patterns is crucial. Otherwise, we risk repeating history's gravest mistakes while obliviously marching toward our own undoing. If this has opened a new avenue of thought for you, consider exploring further. History holds the keys to many answers. Allow me to guide you on where to seek them out. As they expanded their reach across various regions, the Ottomans established an innovative approach that allowed them to integrate newly acquired territories seamlessly into their economic framework. This integration facilitated tax collection and resource management on an unprecedented scale for an empire of its time. By effectively utilizing local governance structures alongside their own administrative systems, they ensured that each conquest was not only strategically advantageous but also financially rewarding. In essence, what set the Ottomans apart was their ability to transform warfare into an engine for economic development, a feat few had accomplished before them or would accomplish after them. This unique perspective on conflict laid the groundwork for one of history's most enduring empires, illustrating that sometimes adversity can yield unexpected rewards if approached strategically. By the time the Ottomans seized Bursa in the year 1326 and subsequently invaded Europe during the 1350s, they had transformed from a mere frontier tribe into a formidable power. They established themselves as a rising empire, strategically controlling critical trade routes that connected Europe to Asia, creating an economic monopoly akin to commanding the major arteries of medieval commerce. Every merchant traveling from Venice to Persia, from Cairo to Budapest, or from Baghdad to Istanbul found themselves passing through Ottoman toll gates. This situation proved significant because waging war requires 3 essential resources: food, metal, and manpower. The Ottomans did not necessarily possess all these resources in greater quantities than their neighbors. However, they had something even more crucial: a steady flow of income. Their empire flourished at one of the most prosperous crossroads of the pre-modern world. Luxurious silk, exotic spices, intricately woven carpets, majestic horses, weaponry, timber supplies, sugarcane, and copper all traversed their territories. Each time goods were transported through their lands, the Ottomans imposed taxes on those transactions. Yet merely having a robust revenue base does not elucidate how this vast empire financed centuries of military campaigns that stretched from the walls of Vienna to the mountains of Yemen. Nearly every empire throughout history has generated income. However, Most ultimately collapsed under the weight of military expenditures. What set the Ottomans apart was their innovative structure, a financial system designed to ensure that their army functioned as a self-sustaining institution. This is where history shifts focus from geographical advantage to architectural design, one of the most significant yet often misunderstood innovations in Ottoman history, the Timar system. Imagine a government striving to curtail its greatest expenses, salaries for soldiers. In contemporary nations, astronomical sums are spent on professional armies, covering wages, equipment costs, horses, and pensions, which can drain national budgets.